Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. This week's Parashat is going to be Parashat Beshalach. And I want to ask you all a really fundamental, serious question about this Parasha and about a large portion of the Torah in general. Something that perhaps doesn't come to the minds of many, or maybe it does, I don't know. But when you think about it, it's like I don't even know. It's like I just can't describe it. The question is so big. And this is how it is. So, we look at the very beginning of this parasha, and Hashem decides that when He finally takes the Jewish people out of Egypt, He says, you know what? I'm not going to bring them the normal way to Israel. As the pasuk says, I'm not going to bring them to Derech Eretz Pelishtim. I'm not going to bring them the way of the land of the Philistines. As we know, the Philistines lived in Israel. They were a very powerful nation of Israel. But God is saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bring them that way. No. I'm going to bring them a different way. And the pasuk says, because perhaps when the Israelites, they're going to see war. They're going to have to do war with the Philistines. And then they'll go back to Egypt, to Veshavu Mitzrayma. Now, at first glance, it makes sense. But when you think about it, it's like, I don't know. Because, after all, why should they go back to Egypt? They were slaves there for so long. They were being, I don't have words. Like, the amount of terrible stuff going on to the Jews in the time of Egypt was so serious, and it was for so long, that it's almost unthinkable that they finally get salvation. And, but, maybe they're going to go back. How are they going to go back? What do you mean they're going to go back? They just saw the 10 plagues of Egypt that were all miraculous. Our sages tell us, for all of them, that the Jews weren't affected. You see all this miraculous events happen and unfold right before your eyes. You see that there is a God. I mean, you legit see it. And now God is finally taking you out. And not only that, if you look further in the parasha, it says that God led us with a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, and He did all sorts of things to protect us. And it's possible that the Jews are going to go back to Egypt? I mean, does this bother you? What is the Torah really saying? And so this is what I think is really being said. You see, we know that Egypt was Ervat Haaretz. We know that Egypt, that Mitzrayim, was a terrible place with such terrible morals and terrible ideology. And the truth is that rubbed off on the Jews, to the point where our sages tell us that the only thing that kept the Jews back then really Jewish was they didn't change their names, their clothing, and their language. But otherwise, they served who knows what idols. They weren't the most moral people. They weren't the most appropriate people to use such a language. And they were there for so long. Egypt was like the most powerful nation. Well, what else would they do, honestly? It was unfortunate. But you see, the thing is, because it rubbed off on them, because it unfortunately made the Jews of that time those type of people, there was no reason why they couldn't have come back to the evil. Because this evil that we're speaking of course it comes from the Satan, of course it comes from the Yetzer Hara. And there's no reason why the Yetzer Hara can't convince someone to come back. Especially when a person was steeped into it. Especially when a person was addicted to this sort of way of living. And so, what had to happen? What had to happen was Kriyat Yatsuf. What had to happen was the splitting of the Red Sea.